You know why I really love Nick Hood as a minister? I watched his father do it, and he took over for the church, and he was one of us, but he really turned out to be a great minister. I know it's hard, and that's something that I know that all ministers may not be doing what they're doing because for the right reasons, but I know it's hard. I know he's a beautiful man, and we've been knowing each other for over 50 years. I believe in him. He's inspired me in so many ways to do what I'm doing and try to be the best at it. Make sure you watch Nick Hood's ministries. You'll never be the same.
Welcome to Nicholas Hood III Ministries, a ministry of hope, spiritual inspiration, personal power guided by Christian love. May the power of God's Holy Spirit fall upon you as you sit back and enjoy today's program. I introduce you now to Pastor Nicholas Hood III.
Today I want to talk about Jesus and the woman of Samaria. If you have a Bible nearby, open it up to the book of John, chapter 4. And we're going to start at verse 4. And I want to read a little bit of this for you. It's a story that many of you may be familiar with, but I just want to make sure that we get the verses right. And so bear with me, and you could read along with me in your home while I go through this. John chapter 4, verse 4. Now, when Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard Jesus is making and baptizing more disciples than John, although it was not Jesus himself, but his disciples who baptized, he left Judea and started back to Galilee. But he had to go through Samaria. So he came to a Samaritan city called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Joseph's well was there, and Jesus, tired by his journey, was sitting by the well, and it was about noon. Now here's where we get to the story, and walk through this verse with me. It says here in verse 7, a Samaritan woman came to draw water. Remember, Jesus is at the well. And Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." And it's interesting. I guess that's another sermon. Why didn't he say, "May I please have a drink"? But it says, Jesus said, "Give me a drink." His disciples had gone to the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask a drink of me, a woman of Samaria? Jews do not share things in common with the Samaritans." Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is who is saying this to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and you would have given, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." And the woman said to him, "Sir, you have no bucket, and the well is deep. Where do you get the living water? Are you greater than our ancestor Jacob, who gave us the well, and with his sons and his flocks, they drank from it?" Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again, but those who drink of the water that I give will never be thirsty. The water that I give will become in them a spring of water gushing up to eternal life." And the woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water, that I may never be thirsty or have to keep coming to draw water." Jesus said, this is where it gets good, "Go call your husband and come back." The woman answered him, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You are right in saying, 'I have no husband,' for you have had 5 husbands, and the one you have now is not your husband. what you have said is true. And the woman said to him, Sir, I see that you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you say that the place where people must worship is in Jerusalem. And Jesus said to her, Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will worship the Father, neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming and is now here when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father seeks such as these as to worship him. And I want to talk about this woman of Samaria and break it down for you. Jesus is in Judea, so that means he's in the southern part of Israel, most likely Jerusalem. But Judea would include Bethlehem, it includes Jericho, and all that area around and behind Jerusalem and below Jerusalem. But he's making his way to the Galilee, which is the northern part of the kingdom. And he's going to the Galilee because he's heard that people are comparing him to his cousin John the Baptist. They're comparing him to John the Baptist, and they're saying Jesus is baptizing more people than John baptized, even though it's the disciples of Jesus who are doing the baptisms. But for some reason, Jesus did not want to be compared to John, and the super religious, the Pharisees, are the ones who are focused on Jesus. So he's making his way up north to the Galilee. And you have to remember, the Galilee is where Jesus is from. The text tells us that Jesus stops at the well of Jacob. And while he's there, in the area called Samaria, the disciples have gone to purchase food. Jesus is sitting there, the Bible tells us, because he's tired. And that's important. It's important because this is a reminder that Jesus, although he's very God, he was also very man. And as a very man and a manly man, Jesus got tired. And it's easier for me to relate to Jesus, understanding that Jesus was also a human being. He's the Son of God, but he's a human being. So he's sitting there by the well of Jacob. He's tired, and there's a woman there. And Jesus says to the woman, "Get me a drink of water." And I don't know what that's about. I'm looking for the courtesy of Jesus. I don't understand the directness of Jesus with that woman who he doesn't know. But all I know is that's what the Bible tells us. It tells us that Jesus said, "Get me a drink of water." And the woman banters with Jesus. She says, "How is it you, a Jew, ask me for a drink of water when you know that the Jews and the Samaritans don't have anything to do with each other? Furthermore, you don't have a bucket. You don't have a bucket to draw the water in, and you asking me for water." And Jesus tells the woman, "Woman, if you knew who you were talking to, you'd know that the water that I offer is the water of everlasting life. Anybody who drinks from my cup will never grow thirsty. People who drink from this fountain will be thirsty again. But the water that I offer will give you eternal quenching of your thirst." And then Jesus and the woman start bantering with each other. And I like that about Jesus because there's a lesson in this. And it's nothing to be ashamed of, but, you know, men and women, I think God created us this way. You know, we have ways of being attracted to each other, even if we're not. I'm not saying Jesus was sexually attracted to the woman, but they're bantering with each other. Jesus told a woman, he said, "Why don't you go home and call your husband and ask him to come back here?" And the woman says, "I have no husband." And at that point, Jesus says, you have correctly spoken, because you've been married 5 times, and the man you're with now is not your husband. The man you're living with is not your husband. And at that point, the woman knows that Jesus is on another level. She says, I perceive you're a prophet of God. And, and so I'm thinking about this. Who do you know has been married 5 times? If that woman was married 5 times, one, she probably was really attractive. There's something about that woman that made other men want to marry her. How could she be married 5 times? Does that mean that she had 5 husbands who died? Does it mean that maybe she had been divorced? But even though she's been married 5 times, the 6th person she's with is not legally her husband. And Jesus, being Jesus, he tells her all about this. And they begin to talk, and Jesus begins to talk to her. For those of you who may not be aware of it, the Samaritans believed in the same God of Yahweh, the same God of the Jews. The only difference between the Samaritans and the Jews, there were a couple of differences. Number one, the Samaritans believed that they worship God on Mount Gerizim. The Jews worship God in Jerusalem, which is also a high place, 4,500 feet above sea level. And, that's really the only difference between the Samaritans and the Jews. There's another difference. The Samaritans were the product of miscegenation. They were light-skinned. The Assyrians, in invading that part of Israel over the years, over the centuries, had impregnated many of the women of the land. And so they had children who were light-skinned. And, when we read the Bible, it doesn't really, harp on that point. But what it means is that Jesus and the ones around him were darker skinned. And they could tell the Samaritans a mile away because they were light-skinned people. And, it's unfortunate, even in today's world, when people see somebody who's light or dark, they want to make a big deal out of it. You meet somebody who has nappy hair or straight hair, somebody has something they want to say. Somebody who talks with one language or maybe a different dialect, somebody has something to say about that. But Jesus is talking with that woman. And it starts about water, but then Jesus tells her about the water of everlasting life. I'm going to take a break right here, but when I come back, I want to talk to you a little bit more about Jesus and this woman of Samaria. I'll be right back.
America used to be considered a godly country. It doesn't seem to be that way to me now. And I don't mean to be disrespectful or anything, but it's so many things they're okaying for the wrong reasons. There's not godly reason. People need to really open up the Bible, the Bible, and look in it and really get it into their heart. And this, the way Reverend Hood is doing this is a comfortable way. It's not forcing anything on people. It's a comfortable way and a loving way for it to continue to move in that direction.
The way Reverend Hood presents it, you can understand it, and it makes you want to delve into the Bible even more so that you can see more, because it seems like the program goes off too fast. We need the bread of life.
We really do.
These days we need it more than ever. And Reverend Hood's ministry on TV is giving us our bread.
And the point that I'm making is that in everybody's life, at some point, there's a plan B. God is talking to us every step of the way. God is trying to show you something every step of the way. When things seem to be going wrong, that's God's way of opening another door. I am convinced that God has been directing me every step of my life.
On the Word Network.
Today we're talking about Jesus and the woman of Samaria, and I was just reading from John chapter 4. This chance incident in the life of Jesus. But you know, there are no accidents in life. In the story, Jesus is making his way from the southern part of Israel, Judea, up to the northern part, Galilee. And in the middle is Samaria. And, you know, I've driven that way 3 times. And, you know, it wasn't much to mention. I mean, modern day Samaria, at least the part that I saw off the road, is pretty dusty. You know, not particularly, you know, great looking, but you cannot get to the northern kingdom without going through Samaria. I guess you could maybe take a really circuitous route and ride around it, but Samaria has been there for centuries. And Jesus stops with the disciples at the well of Jacob, and there he runs into this chance encounter with a woman of Samaria. And what we learn in what I read earlier from John chapter 4 is that this woman has been married not once, but 5 times, and she's living with a man that is not her husband. So she's been with 6 guys, and Jesus is bantering with her. They're having a spiritual banter about where we worship. And she says, well, you know, our people worship on Mount Gerizim. And we know that you all, the Jews, you worship in Jerusalem. But Jesus begins to tell the lady that he is really the Son of God. And that, you know, that she should seek this water from an eternal fountain that only he can give. Now, Jesus did not plan to meet with that woman that day. That's the first lesson. And part of the lesson is that, from my thinking, there are no accidents in life. What may appear to be an accident, every time, you know, I've had an accidental experience, something good comes out of it. And it's the most amazing of things. Have any of you ever made an accidental phone call? Or somebody called you by accident? And very often when I have an accidental call, somebody calls me by accident, they start apologizing and they say, oh man, I'm so sorry I called you. I didn't intend to call you. And I said, well, no, wait a minute. I said, really, there are no accidents. You know, I'm glad to talk with you. I'm glad to have this opportunity. And if it wasn't for your accident, we wouldn't be talking right now. And that's what Jesus does with a woman. He lets her know that this is an opportunity. And so Jesus is witnessing to the woman at the well before she even brings the water up. She draws the water up. He is already witnessing to her, telling her that he is the fulfillment of God's promise. Now, why is this significant? It's significant because the woman is a Samaritan. Normally, under normal circumstances, Jesus and his people might not be talking to the Samaritans at all, simply because the Samaritans and the Jews didn't have much to talk about. But because of this chance meeting, Jesus is ministering now to the Samaritans. And furthermore, the woman becomes a witness for Jesus. What I didn't read for you is what happens next. The thing that happens next is the woman goes back and she starts telling her people how she met a man, as she says it, who told me all about myself, a man who knew all about me. And she begins to witness for Jesus. She begins to tell other people what the Lord is doing and what the Lord has done, meeting her right there by the water, by the well. And because of that chance encounter with this lady, Jesus begins to spread the gospel to a whole different group of people. Now, why is this important? It's important to remind you and me that in life, even when you meet a stranger, we have more things in common than apart. You can meet a person who seems so different from you, but when you talk with them, you take the time to listen to them, and they take the time to listen to you, you find out that there are a lot of things that we have in common. And this is important, especially for the Christian. It's important for you and me to be unafraid to talk to somebody else. Remember last week I talked about being alert, being well-dressed, and be ready for action in spreading the word of Jesus. That's what Jesus is doing right there at the well. Jesus was alert enough to realize that his thirst brought him to the well, but it was his thirst that gave him an opportunity to meet a woman that he might not have met otherwise. And because he meets this woman in the most unplanned of circumstances, she is the one who goes back to her people. She is the one who tells her people that she met the Son of God. And that opened up a whole nother opportunity for Jesus. And isn't that interesting? This is happening at a time in his life when he wants to get away from Judea. He intentionally has left Judea because he doesn't want the controversy between him and John. Not that he and John are contentious, but controversy among the Pharisees who were looking for a reason to be contentious with Jesus and connecting him with John the Baptist. He doesn't want that. And so he's leaving that one fire, and there, because he's thirsty, at the well, he meets a woman who, opens up all kind of doors for him. That's one lesson. Another lesson is, let's go back to the woman being married 5 times and living with a man who wasn't her husband. I guess that woman was probably really good looking. And that lady had something going on for her, that men were lined up to want to marry her. But Jesus was not freaked out in talking to the woman. I don't know if any of you, maybe looking at this, feel that you are a beautiful person, a good-looking person. Sometimes when a person is good-looking, their good looks can freak other people out. I've got I have several good-looking women in my church, but I got a couple of them who are on another level. And, I talked with one of them once. I said, do you ever find this a burden to look this good? And she said, yes. And that's hard to imagine. How can good looks be a burden? But I tell you, if you are blessed to look really good, sometimes, you have to deal with the jealousy of other people. Sometimes you have to deal, from a woman's standpoint, she's got to deal with men who are intimidated by her beauty. Some men are that way, and some men take themselves out of the game because right from the beginning they say, I'm not worthy of anybody who looks that good. And then you have another group of guys who want to dominate the woman who is beautiful, just to say that I conquered her. But Jesus is not freaked out by the woman. He is not intimidated by that woman, but rather he talks with her. And how does he talk with her? He talks with her like a woman, as a woman. He talks with her as a human being. And he is teaching and preaching a stranger who's from a whole different ethnic group, who is probably a good-looking member of this different ethnic group. And the woman is just pleased to have the Son of God there by the well talking to her and treating her like anybody else. And because Jesus has taken the time to talk with this woman, she becomes the witness for Jesus. She becomes a witness for Jesus in a way that he probably had not planned. And I think that life is very often like that. That when we witness for the Lord in our own way, when we reach out to the stranger, when we reach out to the person who's maybe a little different than we are, one of the things we find is that we have points of commonality. And that woman begins to testify on behalf of Jesus to a group of people that he might not otherwise have seen. And so the word of God begins to spread throughout the entire land, not just to the south of Israel or to the north of Israel, but the middle part, which is Samaria, which, very often would get overlooked. And so to me, one of the lessons from this is that you and I should leave no stone unturned. That you and I, when we're thirsty, stop and take a drink. And when you take a drink, just look around, open your eyes and look around and see who else is near you. And you might be surprised that, in your thirst, you might actually open doors of new opportunities simply because you took the time to sit still. Some of us, my friends, are moving so fast, we can't see the forest for the trees. Some of us are moving so fast, trying to make money, trying to conquer the world, we don't realize that the Lord has put something right in our laps. I believe today the Lord has put a blessing in your lap, and you can't see it. Somebody looking at this program right now needs to just sit still, open your eyes, slow down, and see what the Lord is really trying to say to you. I think the Lord is talking to me to talk to you right now. And what the Lord is telling me to tell you is just sit still for a minute, open your heart, and receive this blessing from God. God bless you. God keep you. Thanks so much for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you next week. And until then, remember, Nick Hood is praying for you. God bless.
We hope you've been blessed in a powerful way. Just knowing you took the time to watch today's broadcast is a great encouragement to Pastor Nick Hood. If this broadcast has been a blessing to you, we ask that you mail a tax-free donation to Nicholas Hood Ministries at 4535 Chrysler Drive, Detroit, Michigan, 48201.
You know why I really love Nick Hood as a minister? I watched his father do it, and he took over for the church, and he was one of us, but he really turned out to be a great minister. I know it's hard, and that's something that I know that all ministers may not be doing what they're doing because for the right reasons, but I know it's hard. I know he's a beautiful man, and we've been knowing each other for over 50 years. I believe in him. He's inspired me in so many ways to do what I'm doing and try to be the best at it. Make sure you watch Nick Hood's Ministries. You'll never be the same.
And the point that I'm making is that in everybody's life, at some point, there's a plan B. God is talking to us every step of the way. God is trying to show you